Well, for more, we're joined by our editor at large, Ahmed Al Burai. Great to speak to you again, Ahmed. Now, Iran has warned of consequences. Russia said it would shoot down any missiles which entered into Syria. But then we heard President Putin stopping short of promising any retaliatory action. Were these strikes as contained as the US, France and the UK have described them to be? There have been no casualties, and they appear to have targeted chemical facilities.
Mission is accomplished, and the message was conveyed to the Iranians, to the Russians, to the Syrian regime. It's a symbolic show-off, no more than that, because if you remember in last year, after the Shu'airat airfield was attacked, after the Khan Sheikhoun chemical attack, it was much stronger than this one. It was unpredictable. They did have some casualties. They did have some real serious damage on the ground, and there was no retaliation from the Russians or the Syrian regime or the Iranians. Now, I don't think that the Iranians or the regime or the Russians who are backing them do have the capabilities to retaliate. Otherwise, they could at least take down these missiles, because they said they have their S-400 Gladiator, you know, like the anti-aircraft missiles on the ground. The Russians do have them. They do have the S-400 in 2016 in Syria. They do have other defense missile system along the, you know, the air bases and the different military bases of the Russians and the Iranians. They did nothing on the ground. So it's not going to exceed more a public condemnation of what's going on. They may going to take it to the other international arenas, trying to delegitimize the move by the American-led coalition.
Do you think there was some sense of relief, perhaps, in Moscow that Russia wasn't pushed to use those defense systems?
There is no means to use it, because if in case you use it, it means it's going to escalate to maybe a full-scale war. That is something that you do not have the appetite in Moscow to go ahead with this kind of operation, because as soon as you're targeting a warship of the United States, you're targeting any of these carriers of the fighters of the United States or the US-led coalition, then it's going to escalate. You don't know the snowball, how far can it go in terms of the retaliation from the other side. And at the same time, they have been notified by the attack by the US-led coalition. And don't forget that we do have the deconfliction channels between the two parties that is still intact between the United States and Russia. They do have this kind of communication. Neither of the parties seem to have the appetite to go ahead with, you know, more retaliatory steps. It was a clear message to the regime. The international community, mainly the United Kingdom, wants to say to the Russians that we're still powerful, we can do a good harm to you, and you cannot do anything in return. And that was the message of the United Kingdom, much more stronger than the United States, which seems to be, according to James Mattis, who was speaking earlier, that the intelligence work is still ongoing, and we're not sure if the chemical weapon was attacked. But it seems that the NATO allies were pushing to start with this operation, at least to save their face.
It was interesting to see Bashar al-Assad arriving at his office. This was being shown on Syrian state television, arriving with a briefcase. There was a tweet from his office saying the honorable won't be humiliated. Damascus does seem to be shrugging off these airstrikes.
It's very interesting to think about the regime and to think about Bashar al-Assad, whose country, just for him to keep the power, the whole country was devastated. And in Arabic, they used to say, Assad aw nahraq al-balad, which means it's either Assad stays or we'll burn the whole country. That was the first logo or slogan by his supporters at the very beginning of the revolution in 2011. And at the end of the day, we do have a completely devastated country, a failed country with nothing on the ground, proxies on the ground. You have different international powers, no sovereignty by any means. The Russians, they do have more leverage. The Iranians are there. And then the supporters of Assad, they think that he is the honorable leader and he still has the legitimate. That is not to blame the Russians or the Iranians alone. You do have to blame these powers who seems to be, they do have the power, the capability to take him down earlier. But they didn't, because he didn't use the chemical weapon. It's ironic, it's cynical to speak about chemical weapons. If people are killed by chemical weapons, it's illegitimate. If they're they're conventional weapons, it's okay. We're fine with that. You can kill the people with the pretext of fighting terrorism. Terrorism is still in the ground. The terror of the state, as many of the Syrians are speaking about, they're very happy with the attack. They want the Assad and his backers to be deterred from using any kind of chemical weapons, because barrel bombs are no different from the chemical weapons. Still, children are dying. Everybody was seeing Douma, was seeing Eastern Ghouta, with the children, the women, innocent people are dying, but the West did nothing, did not move. The United Nations demonstrated a kind of unbelievable inaction, ineffectiveness of the whole international community. But now, because it's a chemical weapon, it's a kind of a red line. You do not know what is the ultimate game of this. It's either to deter Assad or to just tell the world that we do have red lines.
That does seem to be the chatter online among Syrians at the moment. But for now, we'll leave it there. Ahmed Al Burai, thank you so much.